Hello and welcome to another episode of Wheel of Convo. I'm Joe.
And I'm Corey, returning from a brief hiatus.
That's right. It's a very brief hiatus. We took some time off. I'd like to say we actually did something fun, but...
Neither of us. Work has kind of gotten away. Work and life.
Work and life. So we are back.
But just like it was short-lived, just like the things we are going to talk about today.
So, very interesting topic today. It's going to be fad and future. A lot of times when you sit there and see things, hear things, you're thinking, wow, this is going to be the next big thing. This is the Pinto. This is the Pinto. And it's going to rule the world, and everyone's going to be driving it, and everyone's going to be doing it. And it's like the balloon gets deflated, and it even has that little high-pitched squeal, and it burps around the room, and then just falls.
Yeah, so it's hard because something gets so, for lack of a better term, hot that you just think it's going to stay that way. But I mean, I remember growing up, certain fashion fads. I tend to equate it more with toys and such myself. And you're like, how are these things ever going to go away? And then they just disappear in the blink of an eye.
Exactly. I remember going in grade school, everybody needed ZZ Cavalry cheese and Skids and all of that stuff. And you can't find anything like that anymore.
But I always thought clothes was an interesting one. For me, it was Junko jeans were big when I was in high school. There was the jeans with the 38 pockets. Everybody under the sun was wearing Livestrong bracelets, that kind of thing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
They had the plastic bracelets that would sit there, and if you had a latex allergy, you would be basically, it would be a big puff ball, and they'd have to cut the bracelet off you.
My brother went for the shark tooth necklace.
Oh, that was fashionable.
Yeah.
I remember my older brother permed his hair. And
permed
his hair in high school, and everyone just started yelling at him, Mike Seaver, you're Mike Seaver. I'm like, oh boy.
Growing pains references, guys.
I know. It's like, ooh. But that was funny. But there have been a lot of fads, and there have been a lot of things that have just gone to the way of the Betamax, and it's funny, really. I remember back in the day, especially when I first got my license, I'd go to Suncoast Motion Picture Movie Studio, look through the movie posters, and I was always fascinated because they had Star Wars on Laserdisc. And I was like, wow. But a Laserdisc player was like bucks, man. It was some bills and coins.
It was big money.
It was basically the size of a record, not a 45. What was it? That 33? 33 was the big one, right?
The 33, yep.
It was 33 record. It looked like a giant Blu-ray. That's what it looked like. But the thing was, if you breathed on it wrong, it would scratch. It was crazy.
So you mentioned movies, and you were talking about the actual machine. But I also think that's funny, going back and watching movies from certain decades. Not only can the movie itself be a part of a trend or a fad of the time, but movies are almost like a time capsule for stuff like the fashion of the time or the way people talked at the time, that kind of thing. There are movies that feel 1980s, and people know what that means.
Oh yeah, Fast Times, Ridgemont High. Even you had the 90s movies like Clueless and stuff like that, where it captured the essence of being a teenager at that moment in time.
The zeitgeist of the time.
Breakfast Club and 16 Candles and
everything John Hughes ever made.
Exactly.
Basically. Yeah. So But I'll take this step because, like I said, I tend to think of like certain toys that I played with. But do you have anything that was a fad that you feel like shouldn't have been a fad? It should have been part of the future, a permanent thing. Anything?
Oh man, the Chinese finger trap. I remember having one of those when I was a kid.
Well, who doesn't love a Chinese finger trap? Come on.
I know
Now.
those were amazing. But then I learned how to use scissors, and that was it for the Chinese.
That was basically it.
That was it.
That was
Like
it.
when you figured out, oh, I just need to rip it. You don't have to pull. Then you're good. You're good.
Kind of all.
What was it? Man, what I thought was going to be the future, McDonald's apple pie.
Oh, McDonald's apple pies are still great.
They're still great, but the ones that look like an egg roll.
Yeah, they still make those.
They do? I thought they were more of a wedge.
No. It still looks like an egg roll.
Oh, nice.
Go get yourself one tomorrow. They're awesome. Plug for McDonald's apple pies. They're like $1.99.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you, and not specifically this toy, but this will give away, if anybody on the podcast doesn't really know my age, though I think I've probably said it in past episodes. When I was a kid, I was all part of the trend. All I wanted was a Furby for Christmas, right? I wanted a Furby. That, by the way, is a quintessential 90s fad. But my question is, why didn't that lead to like a trend of like kind of robotic toys, right? That should have been the first step in something that was bigger, and it wasn't.
Well, there was a lot of problems with it because that's when technology started like jumping forward. And the reason why the Furbies got taken off the market was because there's a lot of countries that were sitting there putting recording devices in it because they found out that people were putting them in their offices and everything like that. So it kind of iced out of the market before government kind of had a hand in that and was like, yeah, no more. We're going to take these off.
Yeah, I mean, I can kind of see that, but I suppose that's kind of an answer to my question too. Technologically advanced toys, that's why. Though it's funny because everybody carries a cell phone.
Yeah, but that was before everyone had a cell phone though.
Yeah, for sure.
But what was the other? The Furby did come back though. It did come back.
It did come back ever briefly.
It was very briefly. It was probably for like one Christmas one year. Everyone, everything's cyclical, but they're coming back. They came back. I bought one each for my kids when it was like, oh yeah, Furbies. Everyone loves a Furby. My little one, she did something to it, and like this thing started like yelling at her in gibberish. It was like evil. I was like, wow. I was like, how'd you get an evil Furby? Like it started squawking and everything like that, and started scaring the dog.
Like the most recent fad toy was probably the fidget spinner. That was a pretty big fad.
Yeah, you don't see them that much anymore.
No,
you see them in like the dollar store now.
And that was like a quick fad too.
Everywhere.
But that's it's another thing. The age of the internet has changed what a fad is, right? Completely. Fads used to be toys or clothes, or even like the boombox in the 1980s was a fad. Now a fad can be a video or something that springs from it, right?
Yeah.
It can be generated by TikTok or the internet. The Gangnam Style dance, right? That kind of a fad.
Oh yeah,
right?
I remember that was everywhere.
Everywhere.
Soil. What was it? What does the fox say?
Yep, another big one. Yeah.
Was it? Oh man, there's tons of them. Tons of them.
So all we really need to do, Joe, is create a viral video, which is essentially the modern fad.
Yeah, it has to be like 15 seconds because that seems to be the attention span right now.
Yeah, and for the most part these days.
So you sit there and you do anything more than 15 seconds and people are looking at someplace else.
So, let me ask you, because like there are some that that I've seen that were like before my time. What do you rank, looking back on it, as the stupidest fad of all time?
Oh boy, I do remember when YouTube was young. You had a bunch of meatheads sitting there and trying to take something out of a washing machine when it was on the spin cycle.
Yes, I recall that. Yeah.
And thank you all for doing that. So now everyone has to have a locked washing machine. I hear about it daily at work. Why do they lock? Was it just like and then what was it? The Tide Pods. People eating Tide Pods. I was like, what's up with that? I mean, come on. It's like, that's why we can't have good things, people. We can't have nice things because of you.
I gotta tell you, I have an answer that goes to before my time, but I will never understand it, no matter how many people try to explain it to me. And I think it's before your time as well. I've got 2 words for you, Joe.
What?
Pet rock.
Oh.
Pet rock.
Sometimes people just, like, those are always, you always see, like, what was it? One day I was walking through Kohl's, and I sit there and see their little, like, little display of, novelty Christmas gifts, and what's there? It's a pet rock. I'm like, wow. And my daughter was excited about it, too. She goes, Dad, look, it's a pet rock. I'm going to name it. Look, there's a leash I could get for it. I was like, are you crazy? Like, you go outside and get a rock.
So your daughter was into it then?
Oh, yeah, because she thought it was absurd, too.
Well, I think if you're into it for the absurdity, then that's fine. It's almost like ironically being into
Yeah.
it. But we need to discuss the fact that man's a millionaire.
All for rocks.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. No, you can't make that stuff up.
And it didn't even have, like, googly eyes on it, or it wasn't drawn on. It was like a rock that someone just dug up out of the ground and put it in a box and gave it to someone. And it's fascinating. I don't know.
It's almost like it makes you want to, like, that's the sort of thing that makes you want to think about the psychology of a fad. How does something so very plainly ridiculous become such a big fad? Like, is that it? Was it just so ridiculous that once one person was on board, everyone was?
Well, what was it? On another episode, you were sitting there and saying, what was it, birds weren't real?
Right.
It's that same fact where someone just like, hey, I got a pet rock. You want to see what tricks it does? Look at it. Maybe it was something like that. And then it just started gaining speed and everyone wanted to do that too. They're like, oh, look, I got a pet rock. Ooh. But everyone tries to be like everyone else. And, that's how you make $1 million out of rocks.
I guess so.
Then you have, it was like the rock race too, where someone always had to get a bigger rock than the person next to them.
That's crazy.
I'm gonna get a bigger rock than you. My rock is bigger.
I wish I could go back in time and just try to get to the psychology of these people.
Just sit there and talk. Be like, hey man, why'd you buy that rock? Oh, it's fun, it's cool, and then you're like in a park and be like, cool, I think I'm going to have to get me one of those too, and you just bend down and pick it up, and you're like, There you go, I got myself a pet rock now too. Talk about why buy something when you could find it in nature. It's
literally right there.
It's right there, it's all around you, yet you're going to sit there and you're going to pay someone for a rock. It's like, come on.
It's definitely the laziest thing that ever made someone a millionaire.
Yeah, I could see it being a gag gift and stuff like that. Like,
sure.
I would love to do that, but my wife would probably just kick me if I ever did that when my kids were younger. Because they were always like, oh, we want a pet, we want a pet, we want a pet. It's like, I got you a rock. It's a pet. Look.
What about, like, there's always things that, I find it funny, things that either started and people thought they'd be a fad, but then they exploded, which we can get to in a second. But
yeah.
I think it's funny for things that were definitely a fad, but never completely went away. And I'm sitting in front of a collection of such a thing right now.
Mm-hmm.
Pez dispensers.
Oh. They're so nice.
Pez, if you look at it, Pez itself was like kind of a fad in the 20s. The candy. It was invented in the 20s, and it was kind of a big thing because it was cheap. And during the Great Depression, people, it was cheap for them to get, so they had a lot of it. It was essentially just a cheap peppermint candy. So they were a fad once. They managed to be a fad a second time after they came up with funny ways to dispense it.
Yeah.
It used to just be sold in Altoid-like tins. And now, I don't think it's ever progressed beyond like a fad level, right? Or like a niche thing, but it's still around.
There's a huge collector's market for Pez dispensers because that was like the original Funko Pop. I think if I was to sit there and say anything would be a fad, like Pez dispensers would be a Funko Pop, because those things are everywhere. Everyone's got them. Everyone's got exclusives. The Pez dispensers there's still places that have exclusive Pez dispensers. It's crazy. I even saw, what was it? One store I was in recently, I think it was like a video game place up in the mall, and they were like, did you see these? We just got these. I was like, they're chromed out Pez dispensers. Like, are you for real? I was like, are you for real? It's like
you're right. There's another one I didn't consider, as I am also sitting next to those, my collection of Funko Pops. That very much feels like a thing that can be looked at as a fad in 5 to 10 years.
Oh yeah, because the other thing too is I think they have limited runs on them, right? They don't, once they retire one, they don't bring it back out. So that's the one thing that's going to separate it from a lot of different things.
Also, what they've been smart in doing is they've licensed just about everything you can think of. So it's reached the point where, much like the Pez, it's not really about the Pez dispenser itself. It's like, oh, there's this figurine of this thing I enjoy. Mm-hmm. Whether it be wrestling or movies or music or TV shows, comics, they got everything.
Oh, man. I'm still waiting for the biblical Funko Pop.
That would be awesome.
I think that is going to be our fad. It's going to be huge. We'll go down to the Bible Belt and we'll sit there and
think
sell.
About how. I honestly think you're onto something. You're telling me if I came up with a vinyl version of what looks like a split C. Yeah. And little Funko Moses with a tablet. I think we're onto something here.
I'll be honest with you, man. That'd be very easy to set up because all you would need is resin. Make it look like water, and you would have him, and then be good to go. I'm surprised they don't have a nativity scene for Funko yet.
To the fine people at Funko, contact us at Wheel of Combo and work out, some possible compensation for this idea.
I know. Come on, man. It's like, I'm amazed that I thought of that on the fly just now. I was like, wow.
Yeah, on the fly. I think you nailed it. I honestly can't believe it hasn't happened.
I know, me too. Maybe that's one license that they can't get.
Or maybe it just feels like something that would be like out of touch.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe, but and then of course, me growing up, 90s, Beanie Babies, another one.
Beanie Babies, man. That in itself, I remember in the early '90s, people going crazy for them. Like they would sit there and just go all over the place looking for them.
Now is another. That's sort of you intimated about the Funko Pops having like exclusive ones, the ones that you chase. That kind of started with Beanie Babies.
Oh, that started way before Beanie Babies. I remember Transformers were like that too. The original Transformers.
Yeah.
He-Man.
Oh, by the power of Grayskull, I summon thee.
Man, that was a great show.
My oldest brother always said that was his favorite as a kid. For sure. So honestly, how have we talked for about 20 minutes and not referenced to the first thing we talked about off air when the wheel hit this?
In Pogs we trust.
In Pogs we trust.
Oh boy.
There is literally no tangible reason I could give you for why I needed to have as many Pogs as I could get my hands on. But I can tell you that I needed to have as many Pogs as I could get my hands on.
That was like, something like that was a cardboard version of bottle caps. I remember when they first came out. Because back in the 50s and 40s, people were collecting bottle caps, and someone finally said, you know what, why don't we just make a cardboard version of this and put different things on it, and they could do this. And I think there were games that you could play with it. You could flip them. You could do all sorts of stuff with them.
Yeah, I know. I don't know that I ever even played the little games. I just like the designs. And they did another thing, too. When they were big, they got as many licenses and popular things as they can and put it onto a Pog. Seems to be very common with these fads. Just jump on like a pop culture fad, or whatever was popular at the time.
So I remember they were starting to do baseball cards in those shapes and everything like that back when they were big. So it was something different. Something that wasn't the same. It wasn't like a baseball card that was a rectangle, and people were they were kind of more durable than that. They could take a beating for the most part.
Well, it's weird, because now you've got me looking it up. So the game that was supposed to be played with Pogs isn't even really a game. It's not. Because what you were supposed to do was make a stack and take turns dropping a heavier Pog onto the stack, causing them to be disrupted. That's not even really a game. You're just making chaos, basically.
Go play with your Pogs. Let mommy and daddy be.
Go make a mess.
Go make a mess and then clean it up.
And then make a mess again. It's like dominoes, but worse.
I know, it's like Jenga.
Yeah, but Jenga, the whole point is you're trying at least to not disrupt the tower. This is telling you, just make it and destroy it.
That's why you should get a rock Pog. My Pet Rock Pog, and that would be the heaviest of all Pogs. And
well, you just drop the Pet Rock onto the biggest stack of Pogs, that'll disrupt it.
It'll disrupt it. Oh, man.
And while I'm at it, after I do that, I'll try to solve the Rubik's Cube.
Oh, there were so many things that came with the Rubik's Cube, and they came in so many shapes, too. There was one that was a snake that you had to sit there and make the things go all on one side, and it was crazy. They had a Rubik's hexagon, and
I appreciate the Rubik's Cube because I feel like the original intent was not to create a fad, and he was able to do it anyway. Like, I honestly think the Rubik's Cube caught on because it's kind of cool. It's cool. It's bright, colorful,
but
puzzle.
The first one shouldn't have had stickers on it.
Oh, yes. Yes.
My little sister at the time, she sat there, she was like, I could solve that Rubik's Cube, no problem. I'm like, okay, here. Throw the Rubik's Cube. She starts peeling off stickers and putting them in the right spot. And my father's like, what are you doing?
So, do you think there's anything that feels ubiquitous now that'll turn into a fad?
I would say cryptocurrency.
Yeah, I could see it. And you and I both own some cryptocurrency, and we've talked about it.
Yeah, but
it's been so long without there being like a concrete use for it. And now it just feels like a bunch of people crossing their fingers and hoping to get rich. And believe me, we're doing the same thing.
Yeah. But that's the one thing, though, is it's going to be that's one of the things that you have to just hold on to. You know, if you got some, hold on to it. Don't sit there and be like, oh, I'm going to sell it. Well, you're selling it for a loss. You don't want to sell it for a loss. If anything, it's 5-10 years. It'll cycle back around. But
it'll be one of those things where people think people think that crypto will replace the modern banking and monetary system that we have. That's obviously a bit of a lofty, perhaps even outlandish thought process. The real thing, though, that something I can do is, what changes will it bring to our monetary system? What cues will the monetary system take from cryptocurrency eventually?
Eventually, everything is now, anything really secured is secured by blockchain. So that in itself is one of the things. But, the big nail in the coffin on that one was, when the people were sitting there saying that it was, do you know how much energy it takes to mine Bitcoin, and all these people are mining Bitcoin? And then next thing you know, all these people started going, yeah, it takes so much energy to do it. And then next thing you know, it just crashed. I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
It's like, you gotta be kidding me.
I mean, that's, well,
it's like, maybe people should do some research and see, maybe people should do some research and see, how much energy it takes to make a windmill or a solar panel, and then maybe see if that's the same result. Damn.
Like, I don't want to get too, but like, almost like outrage culture, right?
Yeah.
More so now than ever before. There can be a backlash against something that can like instantly disrupt its place in society.
But I think it's all done by these influencers, these people that have the capital. What they're doing is they're tanking it on purpose so no one jumps on anymore. Because there was a time when, I'll be honest, I bought Doge at $0.25, and I had quite a bit of it when it rose up to 80 cents, and I sold it, and I was happy I sold it at 80 because they did a pump and dump. But next thing you know, then you had all those other people sitting there and jumping in. It was like, ooh, let me get some of this. I'm going to get so much money. I'm going to get some. I was like, here.
And the people jumping at the high point, right? They don't realize what the pump and dump almost isn't. So that, I mean, yes, it's obviously so that the people who got in early can make money. But it's to tantalize people who weren't otherwise in the market that they can do this too.
Yeah.
But if you buy Dogecoin at 80 cents, you're fighting a losing battle.
I thought that within 5 years it would hit a penny and I would be making out pretty decent. But the damn thing went up to 80. I was like, good God.
Any chance we can get that Shiba to hit a penny?
It's
been a rough couple months.
It's been a rough couple months.
Yeah.
Shiba will probably hit a penny, I would say, once the crypto thing starts. I thought it was gonna peak sometime in September when Ethereum merged, but that didn't do nothing. If anything, now it's people don't have the money to do anything right now.
Actually did okay today, Sheba.
But whatever it does, it loses.
Yeah, for the most part.
Such is the way of finance.
Yes. Now that we've hit the finance part of the discussion, I do think it's funny how some of our favorite things, right, people definitely thought would be fads, and they wound up outstaying their welcome. One I can think of, I still do every day, video games, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whole world thought that was a fad. Atari nearly made it a fad with E.T. the game.
I still have that.
Did you get one of the landfill copies? Is that what you grabbed?
No, I got it. I got it out of the box. I got it for Christmas one year when I was young.
So bad.
I love that game.
It's incredible. It's incredible that it's so bad that it nearly killed an entire industry.
Oh,
especially when as big as we know it now to be.
That killed Atari killed itself because it was almost like Pogs and Funko Pops. They had licenses for everything. And they were just making games. And they didn't care how the quality of the game. They just made the game. You know, you sit there and you look at a Superman video game for Atari, and this thing is just like, you fly around. You're just a blue line, and you fly around Metropolis. A bunch of blocks. I loved it, but now when I look at it, I'm like, good God, I was like, I had a very active imagination when I was a kid.
It's also funny because back then they probably, and I don't know how many people saw, who saw into the future and saw what games could be. Because now you feel like I can make a good argument that video games are art. Some of them really are. We're talking in-depth stories with top-notch voice acting, graphics that could rival any animation you'd see on TV. And who would have thought going from the blue line to that in essentially 25 years?
Well, the big game changer was Nintendo. When the first Nintendo came out, that was probably the most defining moment in video games. It was because everything got off of the, it was amazing. You could actually give depth to these characters.
And that's funny. That's something, what video games did was a thing that a lot of fads aren't able to do.
Just grow.
They grew, exactly. They grew. There's substance behind it, right? There was more there than the fad at the beginning.
And everything starts to get better, whether it's, you're getting a tipping point on the graphics right now, which means they have to start really working on the story and the gameplay. And,
right.
I remember.
Right, I remember. Oh, go ahead.
The big jump in video games was probably in the 90s, I would have to say. Like late 90s, when they started sitting there and started making like RPGs.
Yep.
Where they used the same logic of something that people used to play all the time in their basements with their friends, with their small group of friends, and they got ridiculed for doing it. Most logic engines for those games are based off of Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, for sure.
And so here you have a bunch of people that used to play that. That's what they're coding video games based off of, that turn attack, everything like that, roll of the dice. And once that happened, that elevated the games even more.
For sure. And it's funny, you talked about, you're right, we're reaching a tipping point on graphical fidelity, but like you said, what that has done is caused a focus on the games themselves. Because I remember growing up, right, the biggest jump in terms of graphics was probably about the PlayStation 1 N64 era to the PlayStation 2. Like, it was incredibly substantial, what you were seeing. They could sell an entire console based on what they were showing you the games you were going to play looked like. Right?
And that was the death note for arcades, because people went to arcades because that's where they got those types of games, where they would sit there and be graphically better than what you could get at home. And then that just eclipsed it, where you can barely find an arcade anywhere now.
Yeah. I remember, because I'm a big sports fan, sports games were huge for it, right? Because that you had a direct, this is what the game used to look like, this is what it looks like now, and this is also something you see with your eyes, real life, every day. So sports games were always the big jump in terms of graphics, but now we're entering the golden age for gaming, I feel like, because graphics aren't how you win anymore. And just that sheer amount of growth from something that was supposed to be a fad is unbelievable.
Well, you sit there and you look at it. Recently, what was it? That Cyberpunk game that Keanu Reeves voiced?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
How that was supposed to be, they were billing that as the next coming of, Final Fantasy or, Mortal Kombat type games, where it was a game changer. And then what it turned out was it was just a big steaming pile of no goodness, because the graphics were pretty decent on it, but the story absolutely sucked, and people played it and brought it back or traded it.
There's also a dangerous downside, and this is away from the fads discussion, but talking about how far technology has come. So I remember, when I had, the PlayStation 1, could only have so much memory. I had the little memory cards that went, that you put them in the outside of the machine, above the controller port, and I had, 3 or 4 for specific games, because there's only so much memory it could hold. But now, so what that meant was that when they put a game out to the public, that game was done.
Mm-hmm.
It was done. It was finished. It was a full product. Now you have developers who don't do that. Games as a service is a thing. They will put out a half-baked product and fix it later because they can.
I remember that big with the it happened a lot with the Call of Duty games when they started just putting a bunch of them out at the same time. Get the expansion pack, get this, get that, get this, get that. And they would just sit there and just give you 3 or 4 new weapons. They would have maybe 2 more levels. But, they got your $19.99 for it.
Yep.
But you ended up paying $65 for the damn game, and can you play it? No.
It's like a fad inside of a fad.
Yeah.
Because if video games begun as a fad, then types of games take off. Mm-hmm. And now it's hey, you can buy stuff after you buy the game, play to win, everything. This is like the Russian nesting doll of fads.
Yeah. But it's all going to come down to, it's funny because my daughter over the summer sat there and said that what she wanted to do when she grew up was become a game designer. So I was like, okay, sweet. So I looked into it, and, I'm all for it. I'd rather have her sit there and make something for herself instead of playing someone else's stuff or watching people play it on videos. So I was like, sure, let me look into it. And in order to make a game, I was able to get her a game engine that did it for $19.99 and an expansion for more cities and landscapes and everything for $9 over the summer last year. And it was probably the best $30 I spent for her, because she spent the whole summer. She wasn't watching videos. She wasn't watching or anything like that. If anything, she was teaching herself how to do it. And it was great. It was awesome to watch. She got a little bit more versed in it.
It's beautiful that the barrier to entry is that low now, and it feels like all you need is the idea.
Yeah, because there's a bunch of different game engines that are out there that you could sit there and it's on the cloud. You could just dial in and get it. You could set up an account for free. You'd be able to use everything that these developers have. But a lot of things it's when you sit there and look at these screens that they have, there's so many of them. And a lot of times it's very off-putting when you sit there and you look at it. But the thing is that every one of those screens is a different way of doing it.
For sure, yeah. I have an idea that your daughter can take for a game, Joe.
What's that?
Fighting game. Disabled characters only.
Oh.
Wheelchairs are weapons. Walkers are weapons. Crutches are flying. Dentures everywhere. Monocles to the neck. You know.
People with walkers are just taking off the tennis balls and throwing them at people.
And inside of the tennis balls are hollow point bullets.
Yeah.
Yeah. Guys, this is a terrible idea, but if anybody wants to make it, it will make me laugh.
Seeing eye dogs that just like rapid fire poop out of their butt.
Yes. Now, see, now we are on to something here.
There we go.
This, something that looks like a cataract, but it's really a laser.
Yeah.
That people carry around their gangrene foot and swing it at you.
Oh, man.
All right, that one was kind of funny. That one's actually a good idea. Somebody do that in like a comic or something. That could even be about zombies. Gangrene foot is a weapon. That's actually kind of a funny one too, isn't it? Comics.
Comics are always like...
Comics kind of are a fad and aren't at this point.
It's more of like a niche interest.
Yeah.
Because right now, like, I was big on DC Comics when I was growing up. Huge. You know, I was 5 years old when I started collecting the Superman. In fact, I can go in my basement and pick out the first comic book I ever actually bought, because I still have it. It's still in the plastic. It's still bagged and boarded. Has a crease on the thumb where I was sitting there reading it when I was 5. But that is very, very, you know, after a certain time, it just gets very ridiculous. And when they start retelling the stories, that's when it starts, you know, you could tell that they're trying to get new readers.
And they're all guilty of that.
They're all guilty of it, because but that's the nature of the beast. And, you know, in another 20 years, what I think is crap, the people that are reading it now when they're younger are going to be like, well, this really defined my life. But that's how everything starts.
And I'll ask you, too, because we've obviously discussed comic book films on here.
Mm-hmm.
Has that reached a point where it's its own fad aside from comics? Or is it even a fad at this point? Because it feels like the only major movies that come out now are comic book movies.
It all depends on if they have an original idea or original story that comes with it. Because those that do will actually be higher elevated than the ones that aren't. Marvel's getting into a bad rap right now where it's almost like rinse and repeat. And, you know,
they have a formula.
Yeah, and you can actually, people are seeing that formula, and that's a bad thing. Because once people see it, they could sit there and be like, oh, God, not this again. You know, I had one person, I think it was, sit there and say, oh, yeah, I remember watching that. I go, it's, you know, you sit there and you look at Captain America, Iron Man, the first movies. What were they always doing? They were always fighting the evil version of themselves. Ironmonger, Red Skull, Ant-Man and Wasp, Yellow Jacket, you know, all those people always going back and forth.
Right.
But something's got to give with that, and it's
Because like it has reached a point of oversaturation.
yeah.
Because if you tell me 20 years ago that we're talking C level and D level Marvel characters getting their own movies,
And they're getting elevated to the 80s.
yeah, like Ant-Man getting his own movie is absolutely ridiculous on the face of it.
Yeah.
Same with, and no disrespect meant to Chadwick Boseman, it was actually a very good. That is a movie that sort of broke the formula we just talked about.
Mm-hmm.
But if you tell me 20 years ago that Black Panther gets his own movie, I'd be like, what are you talking about?
I'm curious to see how the new one's going to come out.
So am I. It's going to be hard to do without him. I am curious though. And I'm more curious about DC now that I'm hearing that James Gunn's taken over.
That's going to be a wild ride.
Because he was actually the one, we're talking about that formula, more so than anybody. Him with Guardians, he was just like, I'm going to break your formula, and I'm going to do it this way, and it's going to work. Those are the best Marvel movies.
Oh, yeah. And, see what he did with the Suicide Squad. It was,
yeah.
That was just absolutely ridiculousness, but it worked. And I was floored the whole time I was watching it.
He has his own formula. That I will say. He has a formula.
And it's great. It's great that they're doing it, that way, where that's the one thing DC always needed in its movies was they needed a cohesive person. They needed one person that would be able to decide it all. And, people thought it was going to be Zack Snyder, but Zack Snyder took care of Zack Snyder. And, ego got in the way. But, having a person like that is just, he's out there, man. He's out there. In a good way. Right. It's always keeping people on their toes. Like, who would have thought if you said Guardians of the Galaxy gets their own movie, you want to know something? There was how many people that said, who?
Oh, yeah.
Who?
Exactly.
No one knew who the hell Star-Lord was. They didn't care.
No, and it's like one of those things where even people who would consider themselves comic book fans were like, really, these guys? And then even they just saw the trailer and were like, okay, yeah, these guys. Please.
But it made it work.
And even the casting for that's off the wall. Calling up a former WWE champion that's not The Rock. And be like, hey, you want to steal this show? By saying basically nothing?
Yeah.
And being hilarious?
Having Vin Diesel, I am Groot. I am Groot.
And just having, So you have the biggest name of the four probably in the movie. Literally just say the phrase, I am Groot. Next to an ex-professional wrestler painted blue. Somewhat serious actor was in a raccoon. It's just all off the wall. It's nuts.
But it worked. Because it was so off the wall.
See, sometimes that's what a fad can bring us. A fad can bring us just pure, unadulterated joy, and I still think you can classify comic book movies as something of a fad, but gems have sprung from it. So I guess it's hard because I can't see him stopping anytime soon. I can see him generating less revenue, but then again, so is every movie.
Oh, man. Except for Top Gun.
Except for Top Gun?
Except for Top Gun. Top Gun Maverick.
Talk to me, Goose. You know it with the Goose. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's hard. We tend to try to discuss where things will go in the future at the end of our podcast. But that's the funny thing about fads is we don't really have any idea. We don't have any idea the next ridiculous thing that'll catch on or why. It just sort of happens and then boom, it's a part of the universe. Like a hot chocolate bomb. All of a sudden it's just part of the universe.
Yeah.
That was a big very recent fad, right?
Everything is going to be like a lava cake. Once it's out there, it's going to be everywhere.
That's the lovely part about the strangeness of our culture, is even when we're discussing things that did catch on, we can't really pinpoint why or how even. They just kind of did. It just melded into the culture.
Like a Kardashian.
Like a Kardashian. Yeah, exactly. Well, I'm not so sure. Does Trainwreck TV count as a fad? Because there's always been different...
You could thank Ryan Seacrest for that one. Thank you, Ryan.
Yep, thank you, Ryan. You're very mediocre at hosting your morning show, but thank you.
That's not where he got his money from.
No,
oh man,
not, but
he's the executive producer on all of that. He's the one that discovered them. Be like, we're going to put you on TV. You're going to make me a lot of money for just being who you are. But hey,
fun discussion indeed. Is it time?
It is time. Wheel. It is time to hit the wheel. So we're going to hit the wheel, and we're going to see what we're going to be talking about next episode.
Next, hopefully without as big a gap in between. That's what life can do sometimes. No worries.
Ooh.
What do we hit, my friend?
Music.
Music. We have yet to discuss music, and we don't even really, it didn't come up in most of our discussions.
No.
So we can hit everything from disco to Weird Al to grunge and back again.
Oh man, Weird Al. I loved Weird Al.
Oh, loved. He's still around.
I know. I was going to go see him in the Civic Center.
You're going to catch that biopic when it comes out?
Oh man. Like I had hesitation at first, but then who I saw playing him, I was like, oh man.
No, it's straight
Daniel Radcliffe as Weird Al. Who would have ever thought Harry Potter would have been a Weird Al?
And that's making me like the guy more, because the dude's just going for it.
Yeah.
He's going for it. And I admire that. Plus, he does fit the archetype of white and nerdy.
Yes.
Yes.
Weird Al. Like a surgeon.
So, but I will use it for the end of this episode, but perhaps I will bring it up again. So, Weird Al doesn't actually have to get permission for any of his parodies because they fall under fair use.
Mm-hmm.
But he always did. And Michael Jackson, openly loved both parodies. Loved them. He was a huge fan of Weird Al. Weird Al said the only artist who ever said no on a consistent basis was Prince. Which sounds a lot like Prince, but
yeah,
nonetheless, it sounds exactly like something Prince would do.
But I'm hearing there's so I didn't know that, but I saw one of the scenes in the movie, and he actually dated Madonna.
Oh, I didn't know that either.
I didn't either.
That's you would think after like a surgeon that wouldn't have happened.
Yeah,
you would think, but perhaps we'll touch on that more next episode.
I'll have to look out more of that and see.
You have to give me some research on that.
I will put some time in on that. I have some time. I'll be able to sit there and get that done.
All right.
So one of the big things is we got 3 more spots on the wheel, and then we have to redo. So.
Yep, we can discuss what those spots could potentially be off air, or
no, I think we should. I think once we're done with the 3, we should do it. We'll do an episode.
Do an episode where we just create a new wheel.
We create a new wheel. We'll do that and get it done.
And also anybody that is listening and follows on social media or knows either of us that has an idea, we welcome that input for the wheel.
Let us know. Let us know.
Let us know. Facebook, Wheel of Convo.
That might be a good live one to do.
It might be, yeah. So we can
we'll
draw some ideas from the people.
Get the people. Remember the people spot. Everybody do the people spot.
The People's Podcast. Flex your eyebrow and drop an elbow. Oh wait, no, that's the wrong. That's the People's Champ. Sorry.
All right.
Do you hear what the wheel is speaking? That's what you
Yes.
need to
Do
do.
you hear what the spokes are?
Squealing.
All
All right.
right.
So that does it for this episode of Fat or Future. My name is Joe.
My name's Corey.
And have a great night, everybody.